All right. Once again, welcome to our YouTube live broadcast and in-person artist talk with SpekWork Studio. I'm Sandy Moore, curator of exhibitions and programming at the Art Gallery of Regina, and I'm delighted to welcome you to an outdoor presentation. You can hear the noise of a plane flying overhead, of solar-powered landscape painting and artificial intelligence, an artist talk by SpekWork Studio, sponsored by Carfax, Saskatchewan. SpekWork Studio are among the artists in the exhibition I have curated for the AGR's View from the Edge of the World. Hi. And I'm going to break so we can enjoy the wheeling of GAN.
I'm so glad I caught you. Hello.
Okay, good.
I wanted that. I'm sorry. The other day. I was just, wow, this is awesome. This is, hi, can I give you a hug? I'm sorry.
How's the camera?
That's good. I think.
Sorry, I stepped on your foot.
Great to see you guys.
Okay. Hi, welcome all our in-person attendees.
If I
Oh, sick. Oh,
I guess I could just stay. It's not quite long enough to fit all the way over here. Is it this extension cord?
I think the power is good
Yeah,
the way
we'll
it
just
is.
leave it for now. Don't want to reset anything more than we have to.
Yeah. My 13-minute video turned
Nice.
Okay, so just want to let you folks know as well that right in front of Kat's video or Kat's computer is where you can be seen by the camera. Okay. Hey friends, I'm actually starting our recording here.
What should we do?
Sit down. And I'm also have to be sort of partially hidden. Actually, I'm just going to turn the camera back towards me. There. Please do. Thank you, God. What an inauspicious start. But welcome to our outdoor presentation on a beautiful day, which is very exciting. And welcome to our in-person friends. Please help yourself to snacks and drinks at the back. I'm Sandy Moore, a curator of exhibitions and programming at the Art Gallery of Regina, and I'm delighted to welcome you to solar-powered landscape painting, artificial intelligence, solar-powered landscape painting, artificial intelligence, and artist talk by SpekWork Studio, sponsored by Carfax, Saskatchewan. SpekWork Studio are among the artists I curated in the exhibition View from the Edge of the World at the Art Gallery of Regina. View from the Edge of the World dispels preconceived notions about the land around us, what constitutes landscape and art. Landscape is often imagined to be an innocuous genre of art. However, how we represent the land reveals our attitudes about it. Is it a thing to be commodified and exploited, or a living entity inseparable from our human lives? As immigrants, settlers, or Indigenous individuals, we need images of this place to understand, respect, and treasure this land. And it's very thrilling to be out on the land, experiencing the wind, the sun, the movement of animals around us today. Art allows us to let go of defensiveness and to have difficult conversations with hope and kindness, healing, and action. When we think of land and our relationships to the land, the settlement of Canada by Europeans is not far from those thoughts. As an uninvited guest on these lands known as Treaty 4, I am grateful to have an opportunity to form a relationship of mutual respect with these lands of Oskana ka Asiteki, or Regina. By acknowledging the land, I recognize the strength and wisdom of the place that has given rise to the people who are of the land. I call upon the spirit of this place to support the gallery's good intentions for us all to reinvent our relationships to land, especially this land, through our experiences of view from the edge of the world, and in particular, GAN of Living Skies. SpekWork Studio invite you to join them and their GAN of Living Skies on a walk through the parklands surrounding our building, following their talk about sustainable practices in digital technology. Bluemke and Jonathan Carroll make art about work and play. Taking form as video games, performance, and expanded reality, their projects consider how technology regulates both labor and leisure. They have worked together since 2013, often as the collective SpekWork Studio or Tough Guy Mountain. As SpekWork, they develop video games, virtual and augmented reality, and mobile applications that explore the connections between the subject of the user, worker, and player. They are currently based on the south shore of Nova Scotia in Mi'kmaq. And we will welcome SpekWork Studio and their GAN. And maybe, Kat, if you could start by explaining what is GAN.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, are you able to show the few slides, or
Yes, yeah.
whatever?
All
I
right,
guess
will
I'll
do
I'll
that.
sit. I can't actually see somehow I have it, so I can't see what's there.
Okay.
Oh, I guess I should do. I know. 1 second. Let me just duplicate my slide. That's a funny thing. Duplicate my screen. Mirroring. There we go. Now I know what you're seeing. So GAN of Living Skies is a solar-powered machine learning automated landscape generator. And GAN stands for General Adversarial Network, or Generative Adversarial Network, rather. And that is the type of machine learning that it uses. So it's a bit different than the kinds of machine learning that, if you're looking at kind of in the past year, that we've seen a lot of where it's just like things that we're able to access, like DALL-E, for example. It just is running off of this little computer that is then connected to the battery here. And it also was inspired initially just by the Saskatchewan license plate slogan, "Land of the Living Skies." We don't usually work with sort of electronics to this degree, like custom electronics and such, but it was a really exciting opportunity for us to kind of dig deeper with that. Back in 2020 is when we first started this project, where there's a little bit of information here on this slide. So we began this project when we moved to Regina, and thought that just the landscape was super interesting. Check out what's in the sky. Oh my. Yeah, it's very alive today. We were just really enamored with with the landscapes, as people who had recently been transplanted from more city-based areas like Toronto and Chicago is where we'd sort of been living the most recently before that. And we wanted to kind of play with just our new surroundings, this new context, but also kind of respond in a way that acknowledged like our role as these sort of newcomers, as these descendants of settlers that had sort of just showed up on the scene. So in that way, we wanted to like, what if we really heighten this like alien presence by bringing another alien presence into it? And that is the machine. That is this like AI that creates images. So it was us learning about the landscape. But it was also really us learning about AI and us learning how to build this little robot that would really like speak for us in a way, or at least be as excited about its surroundings as we were. This is just some pictures of us being with a project that we made in 2015. So we don't normally make, as I said, little robots. We love to work with apps. We love to do sort of more performative projects. I think there's some throughways between this project from 2015 called Intern Explorer, where we attached iPads with an app we made onto the chests of performers, and invited audience goers of the Art Toronto Fair to interact with our performers to guide these characters through the art fair, and then maybe this little touchscreen computer we have up here. But yeah, very different types of software that we were working with, but kind of a similar trajectory. In this case, we were interested in like talking about kind of the work that went on behind the art fair and the that you might not see. So we had these like these interns that were directed by this application that audiences could like. It's all blown out on the picture, but it was a little app with like a maze and a little character you could like poke at, and then on the touchscreen iPad, and then that would like be relayed to someone on the next floor who was an intern running around the booths of the art fair. So outsourcing the labor of going to see art to an unpaid intern. We were all like paid a nominal fee by the AGO, but like that was the idea. We were just performing essentially. Here you have, here we've got a little robot who again is automating the work of landscape painting for us, which is very kind. So this is that's kind of the work that we've made in the past, mostly like game-based, very fun, sort of little experiments, often using video games or VR, AR. Thanks, Sandy. Often responding to like the places that we're in, co-op copter scabs being one of those. Collaborator Hillary Cowan in the audience, who contributed to that project that was about the co-op refinery here in Regina in 2019-2020, a co-op refinery lockout rather. And yeah, just been making a lot of games. But then, as I mentioned, we moved here. Became really interested in machine learning for a period of time, and we started working on this project. Here's just an image. This is like a little GIF. Yeah, thank you, Sandy. There's a little GIF of some of its results from an earlier pass of, we'll sort of explain what I mean by that, I guess. But some of its early learning results. So what it came to generate back when we first started running it in 2020. Feel free to interrupt at any time. But just to sort of talk about this project, how it really started is through, we were collecting images of, it was 2020, so it was a pandemic, it was lockdown, and we were going on road trips and collecting stills and video of the land. So we just like stuck a GoPro on top of our car and we'd go on some road trips in isolation and sort of just start gathering this data set, because in order to train a machine learning model of this kind that creates new images, you have to show it what you want it to emulate in the first place. So we needed to sort of build up that resource for it. So there was a lot, probably like, I can't remember how many thousands of images, but this is just one of many, one I particularly like from Lumsden. But yeah, we're going around and taking these shots. And so it was the project was this great opportunity to sort of explore Saskatchewan more.
Technically, there's this distinction between machine learning and artificial intelligence. And like a lot of the stuff that is getting hyped nowadays gets called artificial intelligence, but it's all machine learning. And the difference is that artificial intelligence sort of
You might need to come closer.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, you know.
Forgot about that.
For the YouTubes.
So I was just saying, technically, Kat's been mentioning this idea of machine learning, and nowadays a lot of things get called artificial intelligence, which are actually still just machine learning. And the distinction is artificial intelligence would mean some sort of more sci-fi kind of thing, of something that is actually capable of this kind of self-aware learning and teaching itself. Whereas what we have nowadays is really just very complex probability systems. So with what Kat was mentioning, the data sets of images that we collected while driving around, those thousands, tens of thousands of images were fed into the machine learning models that we were using. And then the machine learning models just look at kind of the aggregate average of all those images and generate new images that are just pretty much averages of all the images that it has already, with some randomness and noise mixed in there. So in reality, it's just a really complicated version of like probabilistic analysis in statistics, and it's actually not so much something that could be characterized as intelligence. So there's like people who bristle at the use of AI as a descriptor for even the things that you see get made using DALL-E or Midjourney, those new image generators nowadays. Those are really just even more complicated versions of what we are already doing, things that are based on larger and larger data sets. And it's kind of the size of the data set that determines the fidelity of the images that are produced and the like how realistic or how close they are to the goals of whatever the prompt you're trying to use. So anyway, just digression on data sets.
Yeah, there might be some folks listening in on YouTube who object at this but yeah, some of the images from the data set collection, just to mention, like, they're not, although we did like take these photos as sort of landscape images, they're definitely not solely landscape photography. There's a number of figures in them. We took the camera to collect along with like any picnics or like camping trips that we did at the time. So yeah, there's a lot of while there is a lot of like wonderful very Saskatchewan views such as this, there's this one back. There's also this picture of my cat. There's also lots of figures, lots of cats. It was really like this document, these tens of thousands of images that were really documenting our time during the lockdowns of 2020.
A lot of them coming from video, like actually recording time lapses or videos, and then extracting the frames and using the frames, because you really need a large volume.
Yeah. And then this was the so those first data set here was like the first results from feeding the model these like training the model on what we had. So you can see, like, in these images, the gray of the road is really, really present because it was mostly taken from these time lapses of us driving. And also, yeah, but you really see that distinction. It's starting to really understand where the sky is, like, very, very consistently blue most of the time, because that is, as Jonathan mentioned, with like the probability, it is that sort of learning that, okay, if this image is a square, the top half of the square is usually blue, maybe there's a bit of like white mixed in, or sometimes there's some like darker blues. So that's sort of the really like simple aspect of this earth. If it's understanding of the image is really just like what colors to place where. I mean, I also learned that in art school, so it was getting its education.
What are we but probabilistic analysis machines too?
Here's an image of it being trained, not on solar power at this point, because this was 2020 when we were still developing just the software aspect and hadn't started learning any of the hardware components. But at a self-imposed residency in Emma Lake, hosted by Hillary Cowan Residency Services. And we had to prop up the laptop because it got so hot, because a big part of machine learning and training, obviously you need all these massive data sets, you need these large databases that are also have to be hosted. You also need the computing power to train the model, and so that's pretty like hard on the computer. So the laptop that we were using, even though it was a gaming computer, it ran very, very hot, and it was kind of upset with us for making us do this work. But that's part of that was part of the reason why we were really drawn to solar energy as its resource, because of just how much energy, how many other things it requires to run. If we could look into an alternate energy source that would offset some aspects of this project that we knew would be are kind of icky. The fact that it's so like we do have to invest in all this hardware that requires all these different minerals, but then it uses a lot of energy.
And so like a conversation that became more prominent since this image is from 2020, and then since then the NFT stuff happened, which opened up more conversations about the energy intensive practices of cryptocurrency mining, for example. And people are also since then started talking more about what the cost of using AI programs are, and just there's kind of this growing awareness of software, the resources involved in just running software, not let alone building the hardware as well. So we were kind of interested in how we can offset that, and in a way that also makes sense for the project. Obviously, it's like a landscape generating project, so we want to know how to. Sorry, I forgot about the microphone. Just sit down. We wanted to know, make a project that would make sense for an exploration of AI, and one that was going to be less, I don't know, potentially harmful to the environment, I guess.
Or just was working like with an awareness of that. Because we still had to buy a lot of electronic components to make it run. But thinking that was really like part of that. I think that had maybe prevented us from really engaging with it before, like just knowing that knowing that was a component of undertaking this type of this kind of practice, like working with machine learning, that we would then be buying in or like having to contribute to the overall accelerated use up of resources on the planet. So this is really these types of images that it created. We put it sort of we put a number of the images that it generated into just an animation. So the way that the machine learning algorithm trains is the process is called training, and it's it goes through these successive cycles, which are actually called epochs, like EPOCH, of analyzing the entire data set, which that's kind of the time intensive part of the whole process. Is it's looking at all the images and then combined with a kind of a noise or randomness algorithm, generating a new image based on that. And each successive epoch is supposed to create an image with a greater level of fidelity to the whatever kind of reality you're trying to capture. So it's the aesthetic portion of this project is it's really interesting to see an animation of these successive epochs over time, going from a state of noise, which is you can actually see. So right now we've started training a new model based on just data that's being captured right now from our GAN wagon. And you'll be able to see, if you squint at the screen down there, very, very low fidelity, noisy images, because it's just started this process of training. That's where it starts from. Eventually it ends up with images that look more like this, where you're approaching something that is closer to what we'd recognize based on what the data set is. In this case, it's like all landscape based. I really love the language like used in training that idea, because we're thinking about like landscape and like the formation of the landscape, that these like increasing you just begin, like time begins for GAN with like a very noisy world, and then it just like slowly almost like you can imagine like a world where there's just like tiny single-celled organisms, and like each pixel is just like a little single-cell organism, and then slowly it begins to things begin to like grow, and the landscape emerges as we like can recognize it now. Scientists have interesting decisions. I'm sure there's lots of reasons for calling them that, but I thought it was really beautiful when we started working with it. So we did show some of these. I love these graphics from us projecting these results at Nuit Blanche in Regina in 2020, because they also were the year that they had the drive-in. show, like that everybody, you can kind of see these headlights are the, I guess, the brake lights of the car. And there was this really fantastic, it was kind of the first time we'd shown some of this footage. We showed in this graphic, there was like the results of the training. Then also on the other side, that's blue in this image, it was the data set. So we were kind of demonstrating the result, this animated results, the like this generative process with like what had inspired it. But then we also encountered this funny situation where, because people were viewing it in their cars, not everyone's like headlights turned off in time for the viewing of these animations, and they were on these like strict time limits because everyone had to fit in. So the work itself was often blown out by the headlights of the cars. And I also thought that was an interesting like progression for this piece, was just the moment that you can generate all these landscapes, but then again, like these resource intensive vehicles that were like necessary to view it in that context in that year sort of like distorted the image beyond recognition, like interrupted the landscape with their cars. I really loved that part. And then Jonathan played an improvised accompanying flute or recorder along with it, because you could definitely see him in all of, despite all the headlines, you sort of took center stage at some point. Yeah, and then this current model, so just going over like the actual components of it, maybe I'll like point some things out. So we have in the graphic that we don't have like the actual computer part.
Why don't you talk over here and I'll point that.
Okay, yeah, right, for the microphone. So we've got, yeah, we've got the cart, which is just a pre-assembled cart. Yeah, pay close attention to these all-terrain wheels. They're very aesthetically pleasing and important for bringing the cart into different spaces, like we will later today. Then we also cut some, just some custom plywood components for it, so that it could hold the solar panel, which is on the back, not facing you, and that's a consumer grade, like sort of traveling solar panel. So this is the second GAN. The first one we began building in 2021, which had a different cart, different solar, different battery. But this one we just started building over this year. So yeah, the hardware is improved for the solar panel. It's rigid, but it has a bit more flexibility for transportation. The battery is an EcoFlow battery that contains the inverter in it as well, and there's no exposed cords, which is really fabulous for safety with working with electricity. Those are just the solar components. The solar panel feeds into the battery, and it's all fits on this cart. Then the battery supplies a computer. So this is a single motherboard computer called a Latte Panda. So it's basically a souped up Raspberry Pi running Linux. And then we've got it's got a touch display that we can use. We've got a keyboard as well, like plugged into it. But then we have on the inside we have an additional graphics card and a supply system for the graphics card, a power supply for the graphics card as well, and then a webcam. And so we'd also used a GoPro in the past, but this is the little webcam that we have that fits nicely there. But this is the second version. We had a larger, sort of clunkier version before. I don't actually have any photos of that first version. I have a ton of photos of the cat that we adopted at the same time, and then who used the cart and the first wagon as a little fort. So this is a photo I have of the cart. This is really the only photo I have of it, and it's just this corner. So yeah, that sometimes life takes over. At least for documentation. But this is the current iteration of GAN, and we haven't had because we sent it all to Sandy sort of in pieces. We haven't had an opportunity to test out the solar components until today, or like this new version, the GAN 2.0, until today. Sandy did a great job of putting everything together with our very complicated assembly manual. But it's all self-contained. You can leave it as long as it's not raining in a field, and it just operate. Also, yes, you should. We have a little a zine inside that you should take. Yes, please grab some. Where it's just a paper. You can build your own mini wagon with a bit of patience and some scissors and glue or tape. It's just a tiny paper craft, and it contains a little text about the work as well. We have heard some requests to actually publish like the manual of how we put it together, which we will do that. But if you're itching to get your hands on a mini and having your own like desk sized wagon, please take one.
This kind of speaks to the YouTube tutorial nature of how like the DIY instructable quality of the process of finding out how to make this, because we really didn't know much about like wiring batteries or hooking up solar panels or just this range of things that there's a lot of videos on YouTube to watch. So we wanted to kind of like speak to that by making a DIY fun little toy version.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that thank you, everyone. We wanted to do a short talk so that we could spend more time in the sun, enjoying the sun, walking around with the robot. Thanks Carfax Saskatchewan, Sask Arts for supporting the project with all the production funding, and then the AGR and Sandy Moore for hosting us. And if you want to read that tutorial or the video, I guess we'll be putting together about how we actually like the component parts, there's the newsletter link and also free games at the link below, which is what we usually make.
And we send out one of these, we send out a print every month on our Patreon, which Kat didn't link to in this slideshow.
Terrible with self-promotion.
That's $5 a month, and this was this month's Patreon reward.
Question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for that.
Could you repeat the question just for the YouTube viewers?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if this is more technical than you want to get into in this context, forget about it. Jonathan, you were talking about the differences between artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Yeah.
And when you started speaking about averages, it made me think about how video works.
Yeah.
How each frame is sort of generated based on averages of pixel values from each previous and following frame.
Yeah.
Is that like a really small scale, like 480 by 720 like version of this larger data set thing? Like, is that equivalent?
Yeah, so the question was thinking about the way that machine learning works through kind of generating new images based on the average of all the images in a data set, and then the similarity to that in the way that digital video works, especially in terms of like interpolating between different frames. And I would just this is just kind of more of a guess, but I'd think that it's like that's probably the technology that led to this kind of thing being more possible, like the digital video stuff coming beforehand, obviously. And then also with that, you have like a much easier goal to kind of achieve, which is just going from one frame to the next. But yeah, there's like, there's another like our technical engagement with this is very superficial, which is true of a lot of the way that we use technology. Like,
Us personally.
As artists, I think we want to find a way to like create with technology as soon as possible versus like trying to understand the technology before we start creating with it. And then I find, for me personally, like hands-on learner and everything, I can come to an understanding through using the thing versus like, I don't know what the alternative would be, understanding it theoretically first. Anyway, one of the words that is in the like soup of words around machine learning is transforms and transformations. And I think that speaks to the idea in digital video of like interpolating between frames. They're doing like, when you go from one epoch to another in machine learning, it's performing a transform on like all the the pixels that it's like that it is iterating through. But that's that's just to say I think they're probably related, but that this is just speaking to the like superficial engagement I have with both digital video, really, which is also something that is, even though I use it much more familiar with it, like digital video is already something that's going to be too complicated for me to ever understand truly. And then this is a whole new other thing of depth that I'll never actually understand how to use. But we've kind of going back to this like DIY YouTube tutorial culture, we've been greatly helped by like the GitHub repos that we've used to build the AI itself. And then just in this recent iteration of making it work on here on the WGAN, been really helped by ChatGPT actually to like help me figure out what the code is doing and what the errors that I encounter. I was just telling Sandy today, getting it working here today, what took me I don't know, 4 or 5 days last time we get it working took me like a couple of hours. So there's like, that's an interesting kind of spike in the ability for like a lay person such as myself to like actually implement this technology and use it for a creative practice. So sort of excited by that possibility. Good question though.
Yeah.
I'd like to learn more about that.
I just want to say, if any of our YouTube viewers have a question, if you can type it into the comments, we'll be able to see it and answer it for you there. Any more in-person questions?
We can chat casually as we walk around as well.
Well, we could maybe bring up something that I also talked to you about earlier today, which is that we had like a computer engineer visit the exhibition, and he asked me a question about GAN of Living Skies. And his question was, are they going to improve it? And I thought, well, what do you mean? Like, are they going to make it better? What's better and what do you think is bad about it? And he was talking about like the image quality. So he said there's a lot of noise in the images, and that, in terms of like his discipline, making an image without noise and I guess photorealistic would be a good image and an improvement. And he also had a pretty funny reaction when I suggested that art is a place where we can embrace the possibilities presented by mistakes or things that are undesirable in other fields. So he was like, well, you don't, when I'm making a self-driving car technology, I don't want noise.
Where there's kind of like an aesthetic that we are leaning into with the outputs that we saw here and that we're projecting in the gallery that was like really about accentuating the noise. The images that the images that are generated by the AI by the machine learning algorithm that we're running are very, very small actually. And so in blowing them up, when you're resampling an image to make it bigger, you have some choices in regards to interpolation, kind of like what we were talking about. You have some choices of whether you want the computer to do guesses in terms of when you're blowing up an image, do you want it to basically create new pixels for you, or do you want it to just make the existing pixels bigger? And when you create new pixels, you get this kind of fuzziness that is really like evocative of like a bad quality JPG image. When you just make the pixels bigger themselves, then you get this more pixelated, like pixelated video game look, which is what I went for. So that's the choice, or when you're making that. I can't. Yeah. No. Sorry.
Well,
And
there's
then
like
you have,
different.
like options for sampling, basically.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I
there's
guess
sort
that's
of-
what it's called, right?
Yeah, and there was a couple different reasons. Like we were making very small outputs because it would just take so long to output anything. So was like, there was kind of a restraint, like hardware wise. Like we didn't want to. We couldn't dedicate our computers. We could dedicate 6 days of our computer's power to this, but then eventually we'd need it for something else. But so we were creating these very small outputs, and that's why it was so pixelated and tiny. And then also it was interesting to see at that point, like this sort of it all, like I think when I showed it to other people, they just thought, it's like an impressionistic landscape. Are you like trying to do like a style transfer, which is a different, like it's another kind of machine learning where you take one picture and you make it look like another picture.
Yeah, as if are you trying to do pointillism with this image or something?
Yeah,
like
and
that?
so I thought that was really like thinking about the history of like of painting and sort of like landscape representation, this idea that maybe we'd specifically want to create like a pointillism robot, I thought was really quite funny. Also kind of with that, the idea of those sort of modernist approaches of like depicting things, or like through painting or drawing or what have you, kind of came after like technological like photography became possible, that you could just take an image. And so artists began exploring like different ways of interpreting, like instead of just like hypernaturalism, I guess. So I thought, I've been interested in like perception of how people react to the way that the robot's making like landscape art, because I think there's a lot of different expectations, and there's a lot of historical precedent for understanding a stylistic view. Yeah, but I definitely don't want a glitch automated car. Glitch art automated car. That's really funny.
That's somebody's very dangerous artwork.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is similar to that, what that engineer is doing, because it's all computer vision. Like looking at how computers can read the world and understand the world. In this case, it's like based on these databases of images of landscapes, and then you're telling it, okay, this is what the world looks like now. Render that for me. Show me what the world looks like based on this information that I've given you. The people making self-driving cars are doing the same thing, really, but thinking more about spatialized understanding of the world and not killing people. Importantly,
as long as our robot knows the sky is usually bluish, we're like
that's all it
happy.
needs
We're really
to
happy
do.
with it.
Stakes are low.
Like today, it's perfect for today. Yeah, awesome. Shall we take it for a spin, or do you have another
One more
question?
comment.
Absolutely.
Praxis in Toronto has installed six projectors to create an immersive video environment, and it's a rectangle, but it's really lovely. And when I saw your visualizations, I thought it would be amazing to see those epochs presented in the round in that kind of environment.
Yeah, that's exactly what this is. Like, just to spice, for no real reason other than to spice it up and make it look a bit more interested, I made this cube of the videos that just rotates around and then rendered out that.
Pitch it to Interact. That would be awesome too.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Sorry, can you just repeat what Risa said?
Oh yeah, sorry. So the comment was about 360 video projection, specifically at Interaxis. This is one place in Canada that has set up a sort of surround projection studio. Another place that's doing it is the SAT in Montreal has a projection dome. And I think part of the interest in these things right now in the art world this is a digression, but is the presence of virtual reality and this sort of like isolating nature of virtual reality, when instead with these kind of projection rooms, you can take the VR thing and explode it outwards, where like it puts everybody inside this immersive space that would otherwise just be on one person's face. But yeah, another kind of, well, I guess one of the conceptual things I was thinking of in putting this making this animation of a cube of these videos is a lot of the original data we used to get these images was from 360 videos, because we have a 360 GoPro and kind of wanted to capture as much of the landscape as possible to feed into the database. So it kind of, these images work well already in a kind of like soundscape.
I think
It's much
Viewing.
more interesting than the big blockbuster immersive.
yeah, like the
Okay.
Van Gogh. It's yeah, another digression. We were really at the beginning of this project too. I don't know what, because we'd been really interested in this sort of huge sky, and also like I think the choice to bring it into a virtual space like this, or these images from the virtual space, kind of stemmed from our wanting to actually just have this as a totally like virtual project at the time. We did think early on this might just be like a VR experience where you would have it in this type of space. I think specifically because we were sort of shocked when we arrived in Saskatchewan how much this like really intense horizon line, this really like split horizon line, looked like the default like worldview you'd get in a video game builder, where if you had like a sort of just like a default plane, you get like this blue sky and kind of like this warm gray, and then the horizon line.
Really seeing like the dome of heaven.
Yeah.
Like that is kind of, because in virtual space, you are just having like an inside out sphere rendered around you. And that's just like what the sky looks like here too.
Yeah, so we arrived and we thought,
of it.
we're in the default Unity scene. Oh my gosh.
And we also want, and that in video game engines, that's called a skybox. And we also wanted to, the other pun we were thinking of is Land of Living Skybox.
But that was the work in progress for the working title for a while.
Yeah, may eventually might have GAN of Living Skies kind of go my dream for the most complicated, most niche pun possible. Just want to narrow down the audience of the puns. So it's like just that one engineering student, maybe.
Yeah, like artists who make video games and video game designers and some engineering graduate students
who own a car in Saskatchewan or have driven one in Saskatchewan. Yeah. So you see the whole trajectory of my thought process. I really want to make something with machine learning, but it has to be a pun. It can only be realized through this. But you're welcome to get closer to the machine now and take a peek at what it's generating.
It's because these are early generations, they are very noisy, like hardly anything at all. It's actually funny because it's it goes with, right now it seems like it's going from this, it really makes me think of like an entropy kind of process, because it goes from this pretty uniform grid of pixels to something that's more just like a uniform gray right now. But then eventually like forms that are recognizable will start to emerge out of whatever it thinks. But other people have also called the generation of images by machine learning like hallucinations, or the potential for hallucinations, because sometimes it'll just come up with because it's probability, there's always a probability that it's going to come up with something that's like way off base. And that kind of process is like thought of as like the machine hallucinating, which I always thought was really beautiful.
Kind of like when Google did its like deep dream images and they all looked like dogs, like eyeballs and dogs, because that was the sort of data set and the kind of nightmare streaming that occurred in those graphics. I want to see how much energy. I'm going to see how much the sun has now. It's now really like hitting these panels, so I'm just going to see how much power it's going.
Oh no, we had a butter.
Oh, I just keep. I had too much.
Okay, so nice. It's really making a lot of energy. Nice.
Saskatchewan skies.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. It's making at least 3 times the amount of energy it requires right now.
Can you bank it?
Yeah, so it all just goes into the battery.
Gonna go get the.
Yeah, for sure.
How frequently
Where I watched my parents die for a
generator?
Ooh, that's a good question. Jonathan, do you remember how frequently a new epoch occurs? Is it just every time we create a new we request it, or are we doing it itself?
How frequently is the refresh?
Yeah.
There's pretty frequently, it generated while we were talking. It made.
Isn't the little screen is so adorable.
Made all of these while we were.
Okay.
So that was that was just a couple of minutes.
All right.
Yeah.
Can we see the most recent one?
Yeah.
I wonder if
So then this is
I'm noticing all the squirrels that were
starting
and
like
birds
that.
that were part of
From
this
this,
artist
like-
talk. I wonder. I kind of see a future version, maybe not a squirrel-proof version, but one that might have an
Yes, yeah,
alternate
yeah, that's what I was gonna
locations
say,
for the
yeah.
squirrels too, and that wouldn't impact the computer parts.
to this kind of grayness, which then eventually, as it runs, becomes.
We had a
more,
big problem this
it's
winter
other images
with a
But yeah.
squirrel that was hiding nuts inside of our lithograph printer.
Oh my
Like
god.
a tiny red squirrel, and because we left it
Oh, cool.
it wasn't alone, but we weren't living in the area where the printer was.
Oh.
And I had to vacuum it out
Yes,
every the whole
You were
printer
good
on
at
the
your
house.
house.
But nothing caught on fire, so that was kind of but I was thinking of this accidentally building homes for animals with my art.
Yes.
Or the tools of the art was very
Yeah.
unexpected.
And those, if there's a wire, a squirrel will chew it.
Yeah,
they're-
I was so concerned. There's just so.
Okay, is it still functional?
Oh yeah. It didn't shoot through anymore. It was just hiding things. It was just hiding the nuts in the print in the master disposal chamber. Oh, so many random spaces. I didn't know this part came apart, so now I can find all the nuts. Yeah. Yeah. He's thinking about it.
It's like the one robot in Phineas and Ferb who's powered by a squirrel running on a wheel.
Oh yeah, yes. A whole other power source I haven't considered.
Instead of using solar power,
Just
enticing critters
a wheel
to power your
with
machines.
a walnut at the end of it.
I have a question that I hesitate to ask without John here.
Oh yeah.
But okay, so if we're thinking about a scenario where potentially the squirrels could contribute to the energy inputs, or the sun is there ever a possibility when you're thinking about these projects to imagine them as collaborative with the environment,
Mm.
like with non-human?
Non-human collaboration. Yeah, because I guess the sort of the incentive with this project was going to be that there was at least a dependency, if not like purely reciprocal relationship, where there's like, you know, the computer needs the sun in order to get images of the sun in order to create kind of these homages to the landscape. But for like the other types that beyond like just sort of this is a non-human sort of entity, but not as sort of an animal
No, it's
entity.
different, but it's kind of there's the potential to imagine it like a patronage system, right?
Yeah.
Where like the sun provides the resources for you to then give it an image of itself,
Yeah.
or return an image of itself.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like a possibility.
I wonder like if because it keeps the images just on its hard drive, but then like it never like unless we remove it, it doesn't display, or unless we activate it, it doesn't display the images. So if there's a way, maybe the next stage for this relationship would be sending off like pictures of it into space, into the cloud, at least the cloud, which is of course very terrestrial, but that would be maybe the way that the sun could somehow witness its these homages.
It's like the golden record
Yeah.
of premise, but instead of humans editing it, you could kind of defer to the sun to make those decisions.
Yeah. The sun will be the final. That's
Final.
Yeah.
The one.
Yeah. For real.
The only one.
Yeah. The last one. Hey, Mackenzie.
I got one.
Yay!
I'm gonna make one for my desk.
You're excellent. Oh yeah, take a picture. There is like an assembly video. I don't know if it's up at that link, but it will be.
Okay.
It's a real like instructions. It's so good. Oh, what did you? Yeah.
Oh, good job.
I'm also getting it too.
Is it time for the walk?
I think it's time for the walk. Yeah, Jonathan was just, you got your drone footage.
Start walking.
Stop walking.
You want to get
Let's go
Let's go and see.
We should go along the path and then take it off road, perhaps.
So should I just invite
Yeah.
our YouTube viewers to watch you and Wagan walk away
Yes, please.
into the sun?
Into the sun. Yes. Not yet.
Taking pictures.
I'm gonna take
one.
Yeah.
nice.
I'm just going to
Are you in kiosks 300 level darkening class this semester? Oh, you're doing it for the first time?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. You know everything already, or is it good technical review?
I mean, I don't.
the sunset of the field right over there.
Surely you've done it before.
I've never done like still
Oh.
Aesthetically, I feel like going on this
I don't know anything to do with the
this
larger.
little
Yeah. Give me a second.
Okay, here. Can you see it well on the
Sounds like there's space. So
backing up?
let me see if I can. Give me a second. I'll follow up.
No, it's the I'll turn around and go along.
Are you still live?
Oh yes.